$400,000. My father slid the cashier's check across the mahogany table like he was dealing a card in a poker game. Brandon picked it up with 2 fingers. He did not say thank you. He did not even read the amount. He just pulled out his phone, photographed it, and started typing a caption. My father watched him with the kind of pride that made my stomach curdle. Then he reached under the table and pulled out a metal toolbox. It was dented. The latch was rusted shut. A streak of old grease ran down one side like a scar. He pushed it toward me. The sound it made scraping across the wood was embarrassing. "Dad wanted you to have this." He said it without looking at me. I don't know why. There was nothing in there worth anything. But he insisted. My mother adjusted her reading glasses and sighed. "Don't make a scene, Claire. Your brother actually has a business plan. Your grandfather understood that some people build things and some people just tinker." She said the word tinker the way you would say cockroach. Brandon laughed. He leaned over and took a photo of the toolbox, too. His thumb moved fast across the screen. I caught a glimpse of the caption before he posted it. $400K for the visionary. A tetanus shot for the grease monkey. Guess which one Grandpa believed in? 57 likes in the first 3 minutes. I looked at the toolbox. I put both hands on it and pulled it closer. The rust left an orange smear on the polished table. My mother winced. I unlatched it. The hinges screamed. Inside was a collection of old wrenches, a handful of drill bits so corroded they looked like fossils, a cracked leather journal with my grandfather's handwriting on the cover, and what appeared to be scrap metal packed in newspaper from 1987. Brandon snorted. "Jackpot, sis." My father was already standing, buttoning his coat. "We done here?" "Brandon, I want to see the business plan by Friday. Claire, maybe you can sell those on eBay. Get yourself something nice." They walked out. I sat there alone in the attorney's office, holding a box of rust while my brother drove away with $500,000 in his pocket and a smirk on his face. But I did not cry. I did not slam the table. I pressed both palms flat against the metal lid and felt the weight of it settle into my wrists. It was heavy. Too heavy. I am a mechanical engineer. I have spent 6 years designing load-bearing systems for industrial equipment. I can estimate the weight of a steel beam by looking at it from across a room. And this toolbox, a standard cantilever model from the 1960s, should have weighed about 14 pounds with contents. This one weighed closer to 30. Everyone at that table saw a pile of rust, but engineers know that weight does not lie. I drove home to my apartment that night. It was small, a 1-bedroom above a dry cleaner in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. The air always smelled faintly of chemicals. I set the toolbox on my workbench under the fluorescent lamp and started cataloging. I removed each item individually and weighed it on my digital scale. The wrenches were vintage but unremarkable. The drill bits were garbage. The newspaper was brittle and yellowed. Then I opened the journal. Grandpa Earl's handwriting was small and deliberate, the penmanship of a man who machined parts to tolerances of 1/10,000th of an inch. The entries went back to 1962. Each page was a record, a date, a location, a description, a price paid, and a reference number I did not recognize. The descriptions were technical. Watchmaker's lathe, Bowley and Linen, 1847. Starrett number 92 prototype, pre-production model, one of 3 known. Brown and Sharp original vernier caliper, patent model, 1851. He had been collecting for 40 years, quietly, obsessively, without telling a single soul. At the bottom of the toolbox, beneath the removable tray, the weight was wrong. The floor of the box sat too high. The cavity beneath was too shallow for the exterior dimensions. I grabbed a flathead screwdriver and pried the corner. A false bottom popped loose. Inside was a small brass key wrapped in cloth and a folded property deed for a climate-controlled storage unit in Allentown, 40 minutes away. The deed was in my name, not the estate, not Brandon, mine. My grandfather did not leave me a toolbox. He left me a map. I drove to Allentown on a Saturday morning. The storage facility was at the edge of town behind a tractor dealership, old but operational. The manager checked my ID and the deed and walked me to Unit 114 without asking questions. The brass key slid into the lock like it had been waiting for me. I rolled up the door. Cold air hit my face. The unit was climate controlled. Someone had been paying for it. I later traced the payments to an auto deduction from Grandpa Earl's credit union account. Still active, still funded, with enough to cover 15 more years. Inside were wooden crates, dozens of them, military-grade packing, the kind used to ship sensitive instruments overseas. Each one was labeled in my grandfather's handwriting with a reference number that matched the journal. I opened the first crate. My hands were steady, but my heart was not. It was not a wrench. It was not scrap. It was an 18th century watchmaker's tool set from a London workshop that I recognized from a textbook I had studied in college. The provenance documentation was tucked inside a protective sleeve. Every receipt, every letter of authenticity, every chain of ownership going back over 200 years. I opened the second crate, a pre-Civil War machinist's combination square, serial number matching a known missing piece from an 1859 catalog. The third crate held a prototype micrometer that industrial historians had assumed was destroyed in a factory fire in 1911. Crate after crate, 40 years of patient, strategic acquisition. My grandfather had not collected tools. He had collected history, and every single piece had documentation that would make an auction house weep. I sat down on a crate in the cold, sterile air and called Nora. Nora was a colleague from my first engineering job. She had left the field to become a specialist appraiser of antique precision instruments. She was the only person I knew who would understand what I was looking at. She arrived 4 hours later. I did not tell her what was inside. I just said I needed a professional opinion on some inherited equipment. She opened the first crate and went quiet. She opened the second and put her hand over her mouth. By the fifth crate, she was sitting on the floor with a journal in her lap, turning pages with the reverence of someone handling a holy text. She looked up at me. Her eyes were wet. "Claire, do you know what this is?" "I have a guess, but I need a number." She stood up and walked the rows again. She checked serial numbers against her database. She photographed provenance documents and sent them to 2 colleagues for verification. 45 minutes later, she sat down across from me on an overturned crate and took off her glasses. "Conservative estimate, private sale, no marketing. You are looking at $2.3 million. She paused. "If we take this to a major auction house with the full provenance story and market it as a curated collection, $4 to $5 million, maybe more. The journal alone adds 6 figures in historical value." $5 million. My father gave Brandon $400,000 and called it an investment. He gave me a rusty box and called it sentiment. My grandfather gave me $5 million and called it nothing, because he knew exactly who would look deeper and who never would. The call came 4 months later. My father's voice was clipped, irritated, the tone he used when the world was failing to cooperate with his plans. "Claire, your brother needs help. He is in a rough patch. The business is restructuring. He needs $50,000 to bridge a gap." I did my research before responding. In 4 months, Brandon had leased a glass-walled office in Center City, Philadelphia for $11,000 a month. He had hired 3 of his fraternity brothers as vice presidents. He had thrown a $60,000 launch party with the step and repeat banner that said Reynolds Ventures in gold foil. The actual business, a crypto-adjacent consulting platform, had 0 clients and 0 revenue. He had burned through $340,000 and was now cannibalizing the last $60,000. I told my father I needed to think about it, but I was not thinking about lending Brandon money. I was thinking about something far more precise. I needed him to do one more thing first. I organized a family dinner. I cooked. I set the table. I played the role they had written for me my entire life. The quiet one, the grateful one, the one who tinkered while the visionary built empires. Halfway through dinner, I brought up the storage unit. I sighed heavily. I told them I had been paying fees on Grandpa's unit and I could not afford it anymore. I said it was full of old equipment, the same kind of junk that was in the toolbox. Brandon smirked. He was already calculating. How much junk are we talking? A lot. Crates of old tools, instruments, stuff I do not even understand. I was hoping maybe you could help me sell it. You were the one with the business mind. I would sign the contents over to you if you handle the sale, and we split whatever you get. Diane beamed. See, this is what family does. You help each other. Richard nodded approvingly. Finally, using your head, Claire. Brandon leaned back in his chair. He was desperate. His business was bleeding. Even a few $1,000s from old tools would help. Yeah, sure, I can move that stuff. Probably listed on some collector forums. Might get 5-10 grand if we are lucky. I pulled a document from my bag. I had it prepared by a lawyer. I told them it was a simple transfer and consignment agreement. It was not simple. Buried in the legal language was a clause stating that the receiving party acknowledges that the transferring party has provided a full, independent appraisal of the contents, which the receiving party has declined to review, and accepts all contents at their current appraised fair market value as a gift in kind subject to applicable tax obligations. Brandon reached for the pen, but my father got there first. He grabbed it off the table impatiently. I will co-sign as guarantor, just like I did for his business loan. Let us stop wasting time. He signed. Brandon signed after him. Neither of them read past the first paragraph. They thought they were doing me a favor. They did not realize they had just volunteered to carry a $5 million tax obligation. Nora and I placed the collection with a major auction house. We marketed it as the Earl Collection, a lost archive of American industrial heritage. Collectors flew in from 11 countries. The journal was displayed in a glass case at the preview. 3 museums sent representatives. The collection sold for $4.8 million. Per the agreement, Brandon received 50%. $2.4 million, but he also received the tax liability on the full appraised value as the primary recipient of the gift in kind. His tax bill landed 6 weeks later, $1.9 million. After taxes, he netted roughly $500,000, almost exactly what the original inheritance had been, except his business had already incinerated the first $400,000. He was not back to zero, he was below it. My father, as co-signing guarantor, was jointly liable. The phone calls started that evening. Richard screamed. Brandon threatened lawyers. Diane left voicemails so saturated with guilt they could have been bottled and sold as poison. I answered one call. Just one. You knew, Richard hissed. You set us up. I gave you exactly what you gave me. A box you did not bother to open, a document you did not bother to read. You had every opportunity to look inside those crates. You had every opportunity to review the contract. You chose not to, because you have never once believed that anything given to me could possibly be valuable. Silence. I hung up. I used my $2.4 million to start a precision engineering consulting firm. I funded a scholarship in Grandpa Earl's name for women in skilled trades. And when my father was forced to sell the family house to cover his tax liability, I bought it at market price. I am sitting in it right now at my grandfather's old workbench. The toolbox is on the shelf above me, cleaned and oiled, the brass key still inside. My father gave my brother $400,000 and called it belief. My grandfather gave me a rusty toolbox and called it nothing. The difference is, one of them knew exactly what I was worth.